the Michigan sign stealing scandal, so from Michigan State from East Lansing to Ann Arbor, has hit a fevered pitch again this week. And I'm going to try and hit the bullet points real quick here, but just so people, this is what the latest is at the time that we put this out. One, Michigan has received notification of potential disciplinary action from the Big Ten, which I think is like a formality. You have to notify them that something could happen. Two, Ward Manuel, Michigan's AD, released a statement saying, I'm not traveling to Dallas to be part of the selection committee this weekend because I'm here. I'm staying here to be part of and handle things with the NCAA investigation. And there was a huge athletic piece on this about a former Big Ten staffer that has now given documents to Michigan that prove other teams in the conference were colluding to steal signs and plays for Michigan. And I forgot. And by the way, Michigan is telling the Big Ten, hey, can you just wait for the NCAA investigation results? Because that feels more proper. Meanwhile, there's 13 other coaches and ADs in the Big Ten pressuring Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti to make some sort of ruling before the end of the season. And I think it has something to do with Michigan being undefeated and being a really good team. Call me crazy. I don't think it's outrage. Yeah. I think it's like this was one of the quotes from The Athletic. One coach who spoke conveniently under the guise of anonymity said, everyone's upset. Why is nothing being done? Which is exactly what you wouldn't say if you were being investigated by the NCAA.
Oh, God.
This is a spectacular shit show. I'm loving every moment of it, man.
This is where it all goes off the rails, man, because like this is, the Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man meme. Yep. This is that, but it's like copied and pasted over top of each other. Like there's just like 10 to 12 Spider-Men just pointing at each other, and they're all like, "Oh, you're Spider-Man. No, you're Spider." It's literally just that. They're all pointing fingers at each other. They're all saying, "Well, you stole our signs and we stole your signs." And this is the problem with this whole thing to begin with. Is like we knew this was going on anyway. Did Michigan take it maybe a bridge too far? Yes, but in the grand scheme of things, it probably isn't like this. It probably isn't this crime that deserves to be punished in the way that I think a lot of people think it should be punished. Should they maybe, have Jim Harbaugh get suspended or something, or for a game here or there or whatever? Like, should you do something with it? Fine, maybe, sure. But like it seems like the Big Ten is now pushing for some sort of punishment that is just going to completely that they're hoping just derails Michigan's season, which is, by the way, not smart on the Big Ten's part to do anything, because the Big Ten in this world of college football, where where expansion is ripe with expansion, it's ripe with NIL, it's competitive as hell. You're bringing in new teams. The SEC is bringing in new teams. We're talking about two big mega conferences at some point, and you're like, the Big Ten can rest on their laurels right now and say, well, we bring in more money annually than the SEC does anyway, and all these different things. But like, in terms of trying to make your brand stand out in this world and this battle that's going on in college football to get the revenue and the TV revenue and all these different things, it doesn't make sense for the Big Ten to basically handicap themselves and just go opening scene of the movie Saw and chop off one of their legs just to spite their face. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. Why would they possibly do this to themselves and hurt one of their best chances to win a national championship for the conference just because Michigan took it a step too far? I agree that it looks bad and all these different things, and maybe there's some minor punishment that should be doled out. But to your point on the teams all pointing the finger at each other, like, we knew this was going on. I'm sure there is evidence that this was going on, but it's just gotten out of hand at this point, man. Like, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
There was one thing I didn't add, which is, according to Ross Dellinger and Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports, the NCAA findings do not connect the in-person scouting and recording of opponents' sidelines to Harbaugh. So that was like, you need the smoking gun. You need some sort of evidence for the NCAA to, quote unquote, come down hard. Though I've dropped the hammer, because that's what Ohio State fans want and Purdue fans and Nebraska fans want. you need to be able to connect the dots. And whether that actually happened or not doesn't matter. It's all about evidence. And like that to me is where it then circles back to the NCAA. Because remember, circles back to the Big Ten. The Big Ten does not have an investigative arm. So any information they rely on is either supplied by other schools, which you're then trusting those schools to be unbiased. Yeah. You're then trusting those schools to
which clearly they aren't.
Well, and basically make sure that they're not fudging the data. And there is evidence that Connor Stallion bought tickets and that they have videographic evidence of Connor Stallions being in those seats recording the opponent's sidelines. But the key point is, can you tie it back to Jim Harbaugh? And if you can't, it's meaning if the NCAA can't, there's no way the Big Ten can. So then what are we really talking about here? Like, the NCAA has no way to prove this. The Big Ten then, you know what this is? I'm going to tell you right now what this is. Tony Petitti is everyone's new stepdad. Okay, he's been on the job about a year, and now he's home alone with the kids. He can't call the mom, and all of a sudden, he has no idea. There's no background. There's no, like, he's just here trying to appease everybody. And in the end, you can't, because this is a massive embarrassment to the Big Ten. And everyone, and it's not just the 13 teams accusing or frustrated, it's Michigan too. Everyone's acting like a petulant toddler. But Tony Petitti ain't going to paddle that ass. Tony Petitti isn't going to set you in timeout, and he has no idea what to do. He doesn't have the skills to do it. And I think, like, if I'm Tony Petitti, I'm going to all 14 schools and saying, shut the hell up. Like, let this thing, because here's the thing. If this happened in February, and every other step happened, right? The call with the 13 coaches and ADs, the visit with Ono, the president of Michigan, all these different things. It's so much quieter. But right now, it's happening in broad daylight in the thick of the NCAA football season, in the Big Ten season, where you've got two teams vying for a playoff spot. And thank God the College Football Selection Committee has said, that doesn't matter to us. We're here to talk about what's happened on the field and football. But, like, it is this giant scandal. And I'm telling you, the longer that Tony Petitti continues to try and pacify everybody, and I'm really talking about the 13 other schools right now, the longer he does, the better chance that this thing is at a fevered pitch by the time Ohio State and Michigan kick off. And that is a travesty for this rivalry. That this thing, which is significant, but not as significant as it's being made out to, could overshadow or be the number one story in a game where you could literally have the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the college football playoffs. Like, seriously, we're not just talking about the Big Ten title. We're talking about a chance that both teams, depending on this game, could be playoff teams. And Tony Petitti's dumbass is like, well, show me on the doll where Michigan gave you a boo-boo.
Yeah, and there was that other story that came out about how Michigan was trying to pin it on, like, Ryan Day, this PI that was hired, like it was him who did it. And, like, I'm just now at a point where I'm like, if Ohio State really had a big hand in this, like, how does that benefit them, knowing, again, because I think this whole thing just comes back to, this doesn't work out for Ohio State in the end. Like, this whole scandal, everything surrounding it, everything that's going on with it, it all just ends in Michigan being pissed off when you get to that game in a couple weeks here on November 25th. And if they think you're involved at all, or if Jim Harbaugh says, we saw, Nick, this team against the Little Sisters of the Poor that they were playing in the early stages of the season, were holding up the number 4 in honor of Jim Harbaugh because he wasn't out there for their 60-7 ass whooping on Colorado State or whoever the hell they played. Like, that they were motivated during that span of time when they knew they were going to win those games anyway. Can you imagine if you suspend him, or if, like, this is still, like, looming large over their heads when they get to that game and they somehow, some way, you know that Jim Harbaugh is trying to, maybe he's not outright saying it, but you know within the program the talk is like, oh, Ohio State had to be involved. Like, they're trying to spin this into their advantage. Like, this doesn't benefit Ohio State. It doesn't benefit the Big Ten. It's all just gotten so much farther than I ever thought it was. And I liked it better when I could just laugh about the name Connor Stallions and laugh at how stupid he was to execute this whole plan the way that he executed it, and that we could kind of keep it moving, assuming that there'd be some minor punishment, and that would be that. But all of a sudden, it is doomsday, end of the world, that this is going on, and everyone's pointing the finger at each other. I agree with you. Like, it's a disaster, and the Big Ten is kind of out of their league with the way that they're handling it.
Well, and I just want to know why the need to get closure on this now from the rest of the Big Ten, because you can't. Because
and that's Nick. That's the part to me that feels like it's like a witch hunt. Because you could just let it ride and let the NCAA do their thing and whatever, and then maybe next year you're like, okay, Jim Harbaugh suspended 3 games again if he even stays, unless he goes to the NFL, which I think is going to happen anyway. But like the whole like rushing to get it done and the coach is pressuring like, oh, you need to make a decision now. That's what feels like they just really are just targeting going after Michigan, and they want to throw the book at him because they don't like Jim Harbaugh or whatever. And I get it. Like, Jim Harbaugh is not really a likable guy. I can understand that. But at the same time, like, that's where it does feel like a witch hunt. I'm not saying it is, but you make it feel that way when you're crying nanny, nanny, boo, boo, and you're all upset because nothing's being done fast enough for you in the middle of a season where you have 2 Big Ten teams, like you said, in the playoff conversation. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. The goal should be to get the right decision done. And if that includes punishment, timing of the punishment should not matter. It is about getting it right. And because the Big Ten doesn't have an investigative arm, it sure just seems like 13 other schools, and including Ohio State, smell blood in the water. And that they feel a weakness here. And
what's blood in the water? Like, are they going to get the death penalty for this? Like, probably not.
Well, no, maybe get Jim Harbaugh suspended for the Ohio State game. Maybe get Jim Harbaugh suspended for the Penn State game. I think that's what teams might want to angle for? Is that why it's so important to have it happen now? Yes, I think that is a part of it. And for me, I like the frustrating thing here is, again, I don't like when there's immediacy, like we need the death penalty now. Like, no, let's let this thing play out. And the NCAA, with the report saying they can't tie it back to Harbaugh, should completely neuter a lot of the rage on this. Whether it doesn't matter whether I think he knew. It doesn't matter. It is what can you prove? And that's absolutely what the NCAA and Big Ten should care about, because if you don't, your ass will be sued. And I know, like, Ohio State fans have scoffed at the idea of Michigan suing the Big Ten. Nobody wants discovery. Nobody wants. The Big Ten does not want, because what's going to happen is, this is why the leak came out that Michigan had a former Big Ten staffer send them evidence, text messages of teams communicating and gathering information together to steal signs. All right. This is why that all Ward Manuel staying in the war room in Ann Arbor, because Michigan very intelligently, in my opinion, is going to war, and they know they're going to war. Yeah. And if you're the Big Ten, if you think this sign stealing scandal hurts your integrity as a conference, wait until some of the things that are going to come out. Because here's the thing. Much like the sign stealing stuff, the truth doesn't matter. In the eye of public, it is for some reason in college football. It's the message boards. It's every rumor. It's every innuendo, which, by the way, is more often so much worse than what the reality is.
Yeah.
But all the things that have happened with Michigan are going to happen when all of a sudden you have Michigan probing to release this information to the public. Because then the hysteria is going to be built up, and it's going to be something that becomes a black cloud over the Big Ten. It already is to some degree, but it can get really ugly really quick. And so to scoff at the idea of Michigan suing is stupid. You do not listen. Everybody wants to play the high road in this Ohio State rivalry. Oh, Michigan forever. What was their BS? Oh, well, we could win national titles, but we have standards. Yeah, your standards were a 12-win season and a 10-win season and a loss to Ohio State and probably Michigan State or Penn State. Like, that was your standard, okay? Well, now Ohio State has taken this high road, and I'm telling you, there are no high roads when it comes to this world. Everyone's a little dirty. Mm-hmm. And maybe some are cleaner than others, but everyone's a little dirty. And you do not listen. Nobody. We know kind of in the abstract how the sausage is made. You don't want to find out in reality, because even if it's not sign stealing, maybe you still have the bag man, or maybe there's other ways to get competitive advantages. This is for the Big Ten at large. This is not worth it. You can't prove that Harbaugh knew. At least one report is saying you can't
did
tie it
know
back
though,
to
right?
Harbaugh.
He did know though, right? He did know though, right?
I don't know. Maybe, probably.
I think.
But like,
but you're right. If you can't prove that, you can't prove that.
But so you can't prove it. The Big Ten can't prove anything more than the NCAA can or can't prove. And all of a sudden, you've got teams feeding. Okay, what is Michigan going to be able to feed on Ohio State or Purdue or Nebraska? And Matt Rule, by the way, Matt Rule this week. And I'm sorry, I covered Matt Rule in Charlotte for a couple of years. I think he is a really nice guy. I really do. Like,
I made
fun of him a lot.
It's funny. He had that. Did you see that speech that they shared last week where he was talking? It was like their cancer game, and he was talking about like going to fight. That was incredible. I was like, dude, I would run through a wall for this freaking guy. And then I heard that quote, and I was like, seriously. Like, so I went from like my respect level for Matt Rule was like up here, and then he said that, and I was like, really.
So real quick for anybody who
everybody's scouting everybody. Come on.
Yeah. Well, he had said, he was talking about the different games that they had lost, and and we got one opponent that scouted us. And it was like, this is a guy who had purposefully sidestepped that at every turn and then used it when it was convenient under the guise of protecting my players. I got to speak up for my players.
And then he blamed the refs and the calls and all this other bullshit.
When in fairness, Matt probably has a better understanding of the situation than I do. I guarantee you he has better understandings of just the Michigan game. I thought it was convenient. I thought it was low-hanging fruit. I respect Matt as a man a lot. I think he is an excellent college coach. I thought he was an abysmal pro coach. I thought he could spend 5 years looking for a quarterback in the NFL, and anybody who ever covered the NFL know you can't do that. I'm happy that Matt's at Nebraska. I hope he does well. But I thought that was a weak-ass comment by him. Agreed. Because I think you told your players, hey, that one wasn't on you. No, you got worked 45-7. You got your ass beat 6 ways from Sunday. Own it. Because that's the lack of leadership with some of these dudes who can kind of talk out of both sides of their mouth. Like, nobody gives a shit that somebody stole your signs. Nobody does. And if you give to the players, hey, man, they're upset about it. Okay. My kids are upset about some injustices in the world too. And as a man, I have to go to them and say, it ain't fair. And Matt said that. But once you say, hey, we got our opponent scouted us, you've given them the excuse. Mm-hmm. And I just think that is absolute horse crap.